Today we're going to talk about the UniVerge 3C UC client. The UniVerge 3C is a software-based unified communications system. And the UC client, the Unified Communications Client, is an application that allows you to control external SIP phones, to utilize a soft media phone, to see presence of your other coworkers, to do instant messaging, to record calls, to listen to recorded calls, and other functions and capabilities based upon your user rights and the type of SIP devices that you might be utilizing. So with that, let's take a look first of all at how we install the UC client. Then we'll look at how we set up the UC client. Installation and initial setup of the 3C UC client from the client perspective. So, to begin with, a little bit of an overview of the UC client. We've mentioned some of the capabilities it allows you to do. Some of the other capabilities, it allows you to move calls between devices if you have multiple devices assigned to you. It allows you to set up call forwarding rules based upon your caller ID or based upon time of day or day of week. Many different ways to set up call forwarding rules. It allows you to make and answer calls from the screen of your personal computer. It shows you presence. If you have the 3C Collaboration Meeting Manager, you can have quick access to that. When you're doing an instant message, you can easily escalate that instant message to a phone call or to an instant meeting via the web. It allows you to see when you have voicemail in your voicemail box by giving you an indication on the UC client. Of course, it allows you to do instant messaging. It allows you to do three-party conferencing, both on voice and for video calls, from your soft media phone or from an external SIP phone that your UC client may be controlling. As I mentioned, call recording and recording playback. Instant meeting, which is a way to instantly start a web collaboration session using the 3C Collaboration Meeting Manager. All of these are based upon the applications you have been licensed for in your system and the user rights that have been assigned to you by your administrator. The soft media phone is the software phone application for the UC client. We abbreviate it, and you'll see this abbreviation often, as SMP. The soft media phone with a supported audio headset allows you to use this UC client application on your computer to make and receive calls without a physical telephone. With a supported video device, you can also use the soft media phone to make video calls. So now let's take a look at what some of the requirements are for the personal computer upon which you're installing the UC client. From an operating system perspective, the UC client is supported on Windows XP Professional, Windows 7 32-bit operating system and 64-bit, Windows Vista 32-bit operating system and 64-bit, Macintosh OS 10.5 or higher. In each of these instances, the Adobe Air application is required, and of course when you're installing the UC client, if your system doesn't have the Adobe Air application, you'll be prompted to install it, and it'll install it as part of the UC client installation. Additionally, it does require DirectX 8.1 or higher for control of the soft media phone. Now, on XP systems, sometimes this can be a problem as the video controller may be older and may not support DirectX 8.1. If this is the case, you're not going to be able to do video with your soft media phone without first upgrading the video card in your system. Additionally, when you're installing the UC client, whomever is performing that installation must have local administrator rights on that PC. So let's begin the installation. The way that happens in most cases is an administrator will send an email out to all of the users. In that email, he'll list the username and the password for that individual user, provide a URL, a web-based link to a location where the UC client can be downloaded and installed, or perhaps if they didn't want to use the web-based method, they could share a network folder, and then you would click upon the application to install it. He'll provide what the server cluster name is that you'll need to input to the UC client, and he'll provide other information about what you need when you install the UC client. Now, the URL, if that's the method being used, would be in one of two formats. If it's set up in a secure format, it'll show the https:// the server name, the domain.com, and then this port. And it's very important when you put in the capital U, capital C, that you actually do keep it capitalized, because it is case sensitive, in order to get to the proper HTML page where you can download. If it's set up in a non-secure format, it'll just be HTTP. Your administrator will send this link to you if they're using this methodology for you to install your UC client. As mentioned earlier in the first point, they might choose to use a network folder for you to go to and to install the UC client. But assuming that you're using the URL method, when you click on that URL, you'll come to a web page looking similar to this. And in it, you'll have three choices based upon what rights you've been given. So you can install the UC client for a Windows operating system without a soft media phone by clicking on this first icon. On the second icon, you'll notice the little PC with a phone in it, and that is the UC client and SMP for Windows. There's that acronym for soft media phone. And clicking on this will allow you to install the UC client and the soft media phone. If you're on a Macintosh machine, at present we don't support a soft media phone for the Macintosh, so it'll just be the UC client. Now you can use third-party SIP soft phones such as the Counterpath Bria client to work with your Macintosh and to be controlled by your UC client. Once you've clicked on that, the Run dialog will come up and you'll just click Run. Additionally, next dialog that will come up after that is if the publisher could not be verified, it will warn you, and click Run and accept it and proceed. Now in the case of a Macintosh OS, instead of saying Run, it'll say Open. Just a note. So then after you click on that Run, it's going to come up and ask if you want to have a shortcut on your desktop. Do you want to start the application after installation? And it'll ask you where you want to install it. In most cases, you're just going to leave this defaulted and it'll install it to the program files /NEC Sphere folder. You press Continue. Once you press Continue, the configuration URL dialog will come up. This is where you'll input the URL address specified by your administrator. In this case, it's http://sip.univergecloud.net, and you press the Submit. Once you press the Submit, the servers will come up, and you'll select the server that you were instructed to do so by your administrator. Prior to inputting this configuration URL and pressing the Submit, this server dialog will be blank. There won't be any servers. It happens after you press the Submit. Once you've done that, you'll press Connect. When you press Connect, the application will start. Of course, if you're using this in a different language and multiple languages are supported, you can select that language here and it'll install the UC client in your preferred language. Once you've done that, the UC client will start. And there's several things now that we've started the UC client that we're going to want to set up. Now you'll notice here at the top that I have this little computer with a green check mark. If you installed the Soft Media Phone, you won't have a green check mark yet until we've gone through and done the setup. What you'll have here by the computer is a red question mark showing that the Soft Media Phone has not registered with the 3C system. So just remember that once you first come into your UC client, you won't have a green check mark. Even though you installed the Soft Media Phone, you'll have a red check mark. Now, there's several things we're going to set up as we configure this. We're going to configure our profile, our display options, alert options. That's where you set up calendar notification and calendar integration for meetings to show your presence as away or in a meeting. Quick set profiles, soft phone, call forwarding rules, and call offerings. But before we go into the setup, let's take a quick tour of the layout of this main screen of the UC client, because then it'll make more sense as we go through the setup elements. So to begin with, at the top of the UC client, you have what we call the quick access indicators. And this little icon here with the three people is used for the 3C web-based collaboration meeting manager. You may or may not have this application on your system, and you may or may not have rights to be a host on that system. If you do not have the rights or you do not have that application, this little image will not appear in the quick access toolbar. Again, once we've set up our Soft Media Phone and it's registered with the system, you'll get a green check mark. But prior to that, there'll be a red question mark, and when you hover over it, it'll give you information about the soft phone not being registered. Next to that quick set icon is the place where you can click on this little drop down to set Do Not Disturb for your Soft Media Phone or for an external device that you control from the UC client. Next to that, you have profiles. These are what we call quick set profiles, and we'll see a little bit more about them and how you set them up later. They're primarily used for a quick way to set the presence that you want to display to other users and to determine which telephones, if you have multiple telephones or devices, you want to ring, that you want calls to be offered to. Next to that, you have your missing calls icon. And in this case, it's showing that 2 calls have been missed, have rung to this user, and by clicking on this phone, and this little icon here would be red as well, by clicking on this phone, it will take me to my missed calls history where I can see who called me. For voicemail, if I have voicemail messages waiting, it'll show me how many messages I have waiting, and clicking on this icon, the voicemail icon, will dial into the voicemail system where I can log in and retrieve calls. So at the top of the GUI of the UC client is what we call the quick access indicators. Next, we come to what we call the search dialog. This is where I can type a person's name into the search dialog to find them. It will search my contacts. Those are these little icons at the bottom, and I can have up to 10 contact lists. It'll also search my Outlook contacts. It'll also search the 3C directory. So even though I don't have a user listed in my contact list on my UC client, it can search my Outlook contacts and bring up that user so that I can do click to dial from the UC client. It'll also allow me to put in a telephone number here, and then to hover over this little telephone, choose the telephone I want to call from, or use my default phone by just clicking on this device to make an outgoing call by inputting a telephone number. So that's the directory search and quick dial location. Additionally, there's several ways to navigate through the UC client. You have these various options down here. I might have multiple contact lists, and if I wanted to, I could just press on this arrow and it would go to each of those pages until I got to the location that I wanted to be. Or I could come down here and click on the location that I wanted to be at. This little plus or minus sign allows me to add contact lists, so I could add additional of these contact lists. It allows me to add contacts to a contact list, rename contact lists, delete contact lists, remove users from a contact list. So the plus minus is the ability to be able to add something or delete something from a contact list perspective. So these are panel navigation controls, and those same kind of controls are down here by just clicking on them. When we're looking at an individual user, we see their presence here. We see their location if they've input it. We can call them by clicking on this phone, or if we hover over the phone and we have multiple devices, it would allow us to select the device from which we wanted to call. The little balloon, clicking on it, allows me to instigate an instant messaging session with this user. And whenever you see these little two arrows, that usually means there's more details. Clicking on this arrow will allow me to see more information about this user, such as email address, probably department, company, etc. And again, as we mentioned, here is another way to do quick access. In this case, this is a contact list. When you hover over it, it'll tell you a contact list name. So you could set up things such as customer service contact list, sales contact list, support contact list, etc. Right next to that is if you have the 3C meeting hubs, you can click on that and go straight to the meeting hubs. The little clock is what's the icon used to show history. So I can search missed calls, calls I've made outgoing, incoming calls that have come to me, calls that I might have recorded. All of those takes me to that history dialog. This right here, the little magnifying glass, is just similar to using the quick search dialog, and it is a way to search for a user or a telephone number. Here you have pictures that can be uploaded. If administrator has given you rights to upload your own picture, you're able to do so within the preferences. Or the administrator can upload pictures for you. Presence is displayed like this. Online is green, away is yellow, be right back is yellow, busy, out to lunch, in a meeting, out of the office are red icons. You can also, when you're setting manual presence, or if you're getting presence from Outlook Contact, there'll be a little white box next to the user's name, and it'll also show you the status of that individual. This person happens to be on the phone. But if there was a white box here because he was also in, or she was also in, an Outlook calendar meeting, that could be displayed based upon this user's setting of his display and his alert preferences. So user location is presently set by the user as an action of preferences. And then, of course, when you're in a call or a telephone call is ringing to your station, a dynamic window opens. It's not open unless you're receiving a call or you happen to be in a call. And in a ringing call, you'll have a green answer button that you can answer, or you can just lift the handset of your phone. You'll have a hang up button, which really is reject the call. You could transfer the call. You could send it immediately to one of these meeting hub bridges. You could send it to voicemail because you don't want to take the call. Once you've answered the call, depending upon your rights, and if you're talking on the soft phone, now this answer of the call depicts a call which happens to be on a soft media phone, and that's why you have this dial pad that opens. On the soft media phone, clicking on this dial pad allows you to adjust your microphone volume as well as your headset volume. So if people say they can't hear you very well over your headset, or you sound very soft, you can click on this dial pad and you can bring up the microphone control and you can just slide it to increase the microphone level until the user says that they can hear you fine. Additionally now, if I have multiple devices, I'll have this Move Call button. Clicking on this Move Call button will open up all my devices. I could slide down and select the device I wanted to move the call to. So right now I'm talking on the soft media phone. If I wanted to move it to my desk phone, I could click on that and select my desk phone and move that call over to that phone and then lift the handset and continue my conversation, all transparent to the user you were talking to. I could also, while I'm in the call, press this transfer call button. This brings up a dialog where I can type in somebody's name, press enter, brings me right to that person or whichever number of people they are, click on the person I want, and complete the transfer very quickly. Even though in the UC client I don't have that expanded view. If you happen to be an old Sphericall user, you remember the old desktop with a big expanded view that listed all kinds of people. Well, on the UC client, your view is a little bit more narrow and less expanded, but you still have the same capability to perform a quick transfer just by clicking on this dialog while in a call, typing in the name or first couple of letters of a user, pressing the enter key, displaying all of the users with a match, and then selecting that user and completing the transfer very quickly. I actually like it much better because in the old desktop I used to have to hunt for names and there was double name appearances of everyone. So I find using the UC client and transferring calls by just typing in the name of the person I need to go to much more convenient than I did in the old desktop. I can also transfer it straight to a conference bridge. I can put the caller on hold. If I have the rights, I can record the call. If this happens to be a call with another 3C user and we happen to have the 3C Collaboration Meeting Manager, an optional application for the 3C system, and I have host rights to that Collaboration Meeting Manager, I can escalate this call straight to an instant meeting by clicking here. And what that would do is it would send an instant message to the user I was connected to with a URL. I would immediately be taken in to the web collaboration interface, and that user then would click on his URL that I sent him by clicking on this button, and he would join me in that web collaboration where we could share documents, we could look at a presentation, and we could continue our conversation. So, in the beginning we saw how you get to preferences. We click here on this drop down, and this is showing how we can manually set a preference. Now, if I wanted to set be right back, I could click on this and you'll see a little dialog, white dialog that appears to the right. And then I can click in that white dialog and I could say, I'm going to lunch, I'll be back in 30 minutes. So I could give additional information which would be displayed. See this little white box here? This is displaying additional information. And while I hover over that, it'll tell me whatever this person, Larry Shields, had put into that additional information. This is an example of those quick set profiles. So here's one set up for mobile iPad that is going to set ringing options only to this person's iPad. Or vacation, they may turn off all call offerings because they don't want to be disturbed, and they'll just have the calls go straight to voicemail. Plus, at the same time, it'll set their appropriate presence out of the office. So what we're going to do now is we're going to select preferences because we're going to begin the initial setup of our UC client now that we've taken a brief survey of the layout of the UC client. So here we are, we click on our little drop down which is by our name, and we select preferences. In preferences we're going to set up these various options in order to get our UC client ready for use and to increase the efficiency of our job operation. So to begin with, we've clicked on preferences, and this is what the screen will look like. You've got three main options. This is your general options tab, and when you hover over this, it'll tell you that. This is your call offering tab, and this is your call forwarding dialog. General options, call offerings, call forwarding. Here, while I'm on general options, we have some additional tabs. profile, display, alerts, quick set profiles, and soft media phone. Now remember I told you in the beginning as we took our initial survey that the little computer with the phone in it where I had the green check mark would actually show a red question mark until you did this setup for your soft media phone. And this setup for your soft media phone is going to be inputting an address that was provided to you by your administrator. In this case, it was sip.univergecloud.net. We would set the transport to UDP, and we would put the port, in most cases, unless the administrator says otherwise, to port 5060. The next thing we have to do in order for your soft media phone to register with the system is to select an audio component. This could be a headset. In this case, the speakers or the microphone array on a laptop was selected. If this isn't selected, if an audio device is not selected, the soft media phone cannot register. So an audio device must be selected. If you have a video camera connected to your PC or it's built into your laptop, select the appropriate video camera. These options here you can pretty much leave default as far as minimum bit rate and maximum size. Log levels you can leave set at normal. If you want your soft media phone to automatically start every time that you start your UC client, check this box here at the bottom and then save this dialog. Then we're going to go back into our preferences and we're going to choose call options, because the next thing that we want to set up is which devices, if I have multiple telephones, multiple devices, which devices do I want to ring? In this case, I have multiple devices. And the active column, wherever I have a check mark that says offer the call to this device. So if you remember, if you happen to be an old Sphericall user, in the old days, if you had multiple devices and you wanted them to ring, you had to define that in your call forwarding. You no longer have to define that in your call forwarding if you have multiple devices. All you have to do is come to the call offerings dialog and select active for all of the devices. In this case, Rod Johnson is going to have all of his devices ring because he doesn't like to have to set call forwarding rules. And he wants to just be able to answer from any device that he so chooses at any time. He set his default device as 2475. Now what that means is we talked about how you can hover over a phone when you want to make a call and it will show all of your various devices as shown down here. As an example, I've put into that quick search dialog extension 1109. I've hovered over the phone and here's my devices appearing. I could then select the device I wanted to make that phone call from. If I were to just click on the phone and didn't select a device, it's going to call from the default device that I've set. Now, one of the things that users sometimes do is when they first get set up, they never go check their call offerings and they don't have any boxes checked. And Jane down the row, a couple cubicles down, comes over to the desk and says, I've been trying to call you. How come you're not answering me? And the person says, well, I've been sitting here the whole time. My phone's never rang. Well, that could be indicative of the fact that they never selected the call offering, so nothing is ringing to their phones. So this is an area to check and make sure that you have set up as you wish. If you are using auto answer because you have a headset, you can set that auto answer to some number of seconds and check this box. Then save that. The next thing we'll look at is how do I create these contact lists at the bottom of my UC client so that I have groups of people that I can easily find. The way I do that is from that plus minus. Remember I said that when you click on that plus minus, it's going to allow you to add contact lists or remove lists as well as add contacts. In this case, we're going to add a new list. So when we click on Add List, another dialog will come up. And this is that other dialog that pops up here to the left. and I'm going to type in a name for this list. Those names will appear when you mouse over the various contact lists. I can also at the same time, rather than saving this list and closing it at this point, I can click on Search to add users. When I click on Search to add users, another dialog will come up. So we'll show that other dialog because it's the same whether I'm adding contacts or not. Now, I could create a list. Once I've created that list, I can go ahead and add users to it. Or I can create the list, save it, and then click on the list that I want to add users to. Once I've clicked on that list, so you can see the highlighted list, this list has been clicked on, the one in blue. Once I've clicked on that list, I can press the plus sign and choose Add Contact. Once I select Add Contact, I can just type in a letter. So in this case, I just typed in the letter A, and I pressed Enter, or I pressed this little button, and here's all the users that had A in their name. Now I can just check the individual users that I want and press OK. That will add those users. I can then go back and select Add Contact again and put in the letter B or the letter C and bring up all of the users that have that letter and select the ones that I want. And I can set these contact lists up in an organized fashion. I could call this customer service and then select all the people that I want from customer service to be in here. I could then set this one up as support and select support individuals for that. It's all dependent upon how you want to organize your UC client and your contact lists. So we're going to take more look here at the various options to set up under your preferences, notice preferences, and under the general options tab. We're going to start with My Profile. In My Profile, this is where if your administrator gave you rights, you can change your picture or you can initially load a picture. You can also input your location information here under My Profile. Then we can go to the Display tab, and in the Display tab, we can enter how we want our time format. We can select how users in a contact list are displayed. Do we want them merely displayed by alphabetical order, or those people that happen to show presence, they happen to be online, available, do we want those people to always float to the top of our contact list and then list them in alphabetical order? That's the default setting, and so you may wonder why you'll see people with presence at the top of the list. That's because this setting under display is that way. You can also set up your away timer from several minutes to just matters of seconds, right? And what that does is if I walk away from my PC and the 3C system doesn't see any activity on my PC, it will set me at my presence as away from the desk, and it'll give a little note next to my presence that says idle, which basically means it doesn't see any action. The PC is idle. There's no activity, and the person is away from the PC. I can also set up how I want transfers to operate at default. Do I want it to be a blind transfer or a consultative transfer? I can set up logging levels for the client. Generally, you just leave that at normal. I can also change how I want the picture frame. So here you can see that there's a light blue picture frame. You can choose some other colors that you want to go around people's pictures. You can then go to the Alerts tab, and this is where you can set up sounds that you want to hear if you get an instant message. And if you want to have a screen pop up, a toaster pop up at the bottom of your screen when someone sends you an instant message. You can also set up what the ringing tone should be on your UC client, as well as if you want a visual pop up and if you want the whole screen to pop up whenever you receive a call so that you can control it from the UC client. You can also set up missed call indications And you can set up your Outlook calendar integration, and you can specify how much information do you want to display to other users who can see your presence when you're in a meeting or when you're out of the office and it's set up in your calendar. Quick Set Profiles allows you to create predefined profiles with the name you give them that appear on that main screen. Remember, we saw that under the quick access buttons of the main screen. And that allows me to set which devices I want to ring when I receive an incoming call, which device I want to use as my default device, and what present state to show. So it's a very quick way to set presence without having to go to several places. And of course, the Soft Media Phone, we've already gone through that and how you set it up initially. Once you've set it up, you usually do not need to go to this area again, unless you're changing audio devices. Say, initially I had a laptop and I'm using the integrated audio speakers and microphone on the laptop. I finally now have convinced my manager to give me a headset. And so now I've got a headset that I've plugged in. It's been installed to my Windows operating system or my Macintosh operating system. I can now go to my Soft Media Phone and select that as my audio device. Now, whenever I don't have that plugged in and I launch my UC client, you'll end up noticing that the computer at the top of the screen where the green check mark is may not display. If you have a red question mark, you may check the Soft Media Phone and see what audio device you have assigned. Because if the Soft Media Phone does not recognize an audio device, it will not register with the 3C system, and on your main screen you'll get a red question mark by the computer with a phone in it. So again, we can set up our call offerings. We've already gone through this, and we want to set the active devices. And depending upon how your administrator has labeled your various devices, you'll get more indication. So we place a check mark by the phones we want to ring, and we select the default device for making calls and receiving calls if we do not choose the device from which to make the call or receive the call. And that's defined right here. I'll give you a moment just to kind of read that so you've heard it verbally as well as seen it. And you can set auto answer in the call offering. Next, we can enable our call forwarding. You create multiple rules and you can set them as scheduled, forced, or disabled. So if you know at different times that you're going to be call forwarding in different manners, you can predefine all of those various elements. Only one call forwarding rule can be scheduled at one time. In this example, the screenshot, this would not work because you cannot have all of these different rules set to scheduled. Some would be set to disabled. You can only have one rule set to scheduled at a time. If you set it to forced, that rule will override any other rule. But this allows me then quickly to come in here and just change by hitting the drop down a rule from scheduled to disabled and set another one to scheduled. This also, if you have a mobile client on your iPhone or Android device, would allow you to choose the call forwarding profile. The call forwarding profile needs to be defined in your UC client, and then in a mobile client device you can select the profile to use, but you can't define the profile in the mobile client. Possible rules allow you to schedule by day or by hour, based on caller ID, number of rings, whether you want to immediately forward and continue to offer the call, many different scenarios. So there's basically 5 steps in creating a call forwarding profile. First, you create a new profile by clicking on Create a New Forwarding Profile. In this case, this dialog comes up. Now, the next step is I'm going to modify that profile. And once I modify that profile, I'm going to check New Destination. And for a new destination, in this case, you see a cell phone put in. You see that for forwarding, they chose immediately, and they said continue to offer the call. So this will allow my cell phone to ring plus my desk phone to continue to ring simultaneously. Since on my cell phone I don't have a Wi-Fi client installed on it, I need to use the forwarding to get that continuation. So the first thing you do then, second thing you do is modify the record. Next thing you do is you add that new destination by clicking on the button. Then you modify, or you can modify an existing destination by clicking upon modify within the rule. So here's the main rule. I click on modify and I can come into this dialog and change things. I can use these buttons once I've chosen modify to change forwarding based upon day of week or time of day. So these little buttons allow you to get to the schedule, time of day, and day of week settings for your call forwarding, when they will be active. Next thing we can do is if we want to create rules based on call origin, I can click on these little icons. So clicking on call origin will allow me to define things, forward only calls that are internal calls from another station, or forward only calls that are external calls that came into me from an external line or trunk. Forward calls based upon a specific caller ID or because they didn't send the caller ID. I can also forward calls based upon my presence. So I could say I want all calls to go to my main phone when I'm online, when I'm present, available. But if I'm out of the office or in a meeting, I don't want calls to forward anywhere. I can then quickly click on the drop down to schedule a call, to force it, or to disable it. So if it's scheduled, that's the call forwarding rule which is in effect. You'll notice this bottom one is disabled, so that call forwarding rule is not in effect. You can have multiple destinations within one call forward rule. So you can create cascading scenarios. So instant messaging. On your UC clients, you can search for a contact here. Once you find the contact you want to talk to, you can just click on this and now you can send an instant message. Clicking on this little dialog here allows you to change the color of your text messages and it'll remember what color you chose. You can also change the font, the size of the lettering that you send, and you can change the type of font used. Text entry area is here, and then you can press send or enter key to send the message. Your picture displays here, and the picture of the person that you're communicating is here. You can change, as I mentioned, the text format, the size, the color of your text. You can view history of instant messages that you've sent to this person, and that'll bring up all of the various instant messages. You can specify a date range and then look at that information. You can escalate the call to a call. By hovering over this, it'll bring up your devices and you can select which device to call from, or just click on the phone. It's going to use your default device. And in this case, this happens to be a video call. Double clicking on this user, here your image is here, and then double clicking on this user will make it a full screen video. You can also, if you have the 3CE Collaboration Meeting Manager, escalate an instant message to a web collaboration. Just by clicking on this button, we'll send a URL to Larry, and Larry then can click on the URL. After you've clicked on it, you'll immediately be brought in to the web collaboration, and you can start that meeting. And here you can share various documents. You could share your screen if you're trying to get help, or you could take over control of someone else. There's a remote control option for controlling the other person's computer if you're trying to help them, support them, troubleshoot something. So making a call, you can just hover over the device that you want to call, select the device you want to use to make the call, or just click and it'll use your default device. Here's some various things about when that call dialog comes up, and we went over this earlier about transferring the call, recording the call. So here's an example of being in a call, and I've pressed the transfer button. And this is the dialog that comes up. I can just type in a user's name, and all users that match those letters will come up, and I can select the user in order to quickly transfer the call. Making a call and moving it to the meeting hub. Well, if I happen to be on a call, I can then click on the meeting hub icon, which is at the bottom, this right here. I'm in this call, I click on the meeting hub icon, that brings up all my meeting hubs. I can then take this call and drop it to the appropriate meeting hub. And then I can click on the little icon here for me to join the meeting hub. Once we're in that meeting hub, I can then display by clicking on this additional information. Remember, I told you in the beginning that the double arrows generally meant that there's additional information. Clicking on that allows me to now display those users. So making a video call, of course, we have to have a video device installed on our Soft Media phone. And once I make the video call, on my end, this comes up because you may be having a bad hair day. And you can tell that I often have bad hair days. And so it gives you always the option to show your video. So to show your video, you just click on the play button. And then that starts and stops your video so that the other end can see your video. Again, if you want to make the other person's image bigger, just double click on his image and it will expand into your screen. Now, searching history, you come down here to the bottom of your icon, or you click on missed calls up here, and it'll open this history dialog. With this, I can choose what direction of call, all calls, incoming calls, or outgoing calls. I can choose a range. The default is last 7 days. Or I can choose custom and input a custom date range, or specify a time period, AM, PM, in order to narrow my search. Once I've done that, my calls will come up. And you'll notice that you have this start and a greater than and results. These are like links. So if I brought up this dialog here where I see some of my call history, I could click on start, and that would take me back to this dialog here, where I could then set other options. But right now we'll go ahead and click on find, and we're here. You'll notice that we have various icons that come up, right? And this indicates outgoing, this indicates a missed call, this indicates a incoming call. And you see some of these icons defined over here in this little red box. I can also sort my call history by, again, clicking on this plus minus sign. Right? I can sort by time, by name, by direction of the call, sort by duration of the call so I can see all of the longest lasting calls. I can filter by calls that were recorded, or I can filter by missed calls. Here's an example of missed calls. That will be red if you've missed calls, and there will be a number there that shows you that you've missed calls. And just since we're here, you'll notice this little computer. I mentioned when your Soft Media phone is not registered that this computer will have a red question mark by it. This is indicating that Peggy doesn't have her Soft Media phone presently registered. She probably uses a headset, and she has her Soft Media phone set to that headset, but she doesn't have the headset plugged in right now. So her Soft Media phone was not able to register. So once you click on that missed call quick access, it's going to bring up all of your missed calls so you can quickly sort through them. So we've gone through a brief overview of how to install your UC client and how most administrators will do it either via a URL or by sharing a network folder. We've looked at how to set up our UC client. We want to, when we first install our UC client, immediately go in, if we have a soft phone, and define our Soft Media phone. Select our audio device that we need to use because it can't register until it has that audio device. We want to select the webcam that we're going to use for video, if we have a webcam. We're going to want to set up our call offerings to make sure the various devices that we want to ring will ring, and define what our default device is. We're going to want to create contact lists and add contacts to them so that we can quickly get to the coworkers that we work most often with. We reviewed what the UC client screen layout was and how call operation worked by that dynamic window that allowed us to move calls or quickly transfer a call by typing in someone's name and finding them so that we can complete the transfer in a very efficient manner. We saw how we can manually set preference, and we went through setting up our various presence dialogues. Thank you for your time today, and hopefully this will answer most of your questions and give you a good introduction to the UC client, which is very intuitive, has an online help, and you should be up and running and becoming more efficient very quickly. Thank you.